You're listening to Building Resilient Kids, brought to you by Queensland Children's Hospital Foundation. Every day, the Children's Hospital Foundation helps Queensland's sick and injured kids get better sooner. They believe every child deserves the confidence and resilience to overcome life's challenges and reach their dreams. That's why in each episode, you'll meet amazing people who'll share ideas to help kids be brave, bounce back, and believe in themselves. Welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Building Resilient Kids podcast with the Children's Hospital Foundation. This series is all about tapping into the Foundation's huge network of experts. So everyone from child care health professionals to researchers to community leaders and advocates. And what we want to find out is their proven tips and their strategies for helping kids overcome obstacles and ultimately for helping kids reach their dreams and their full potential. My name is Greenhalgh. I am a presenter for 7 News here in Brisbane and also a reporter for 7 News Spotlight. And it is a delight to host the podcast and be joined by three wonderful guests today. So we've got Brenden Hall, who is a 5-time Paralympian, Jenae, Tien, who is a author and founder of Expand Your Library, and the beautiful Bec Reed, the family ambassador for the Children's Hospital Foundation. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So today we're tackling this topic of how we can bridge the gap between awareness and allyship of neurodivergent and disabled children, and how we can make everyone thrive and feel as comfortable as possible in all settings. So big topic, very important. Before we get stuck into that, I'd love you guys to introduce yourself beyond the headline that I just gave there. Brenden, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so as you heard, I'm a 5-time Paralympics swimmer, world record holder, world champion, numerous gold medals here and there. But most importantly, I'm also a dad. But my journey started in December of 1999 when I lost my lower right limb due to complications from chickenpox, caused a DVT, deep vein thrombosis, essentially a blood clot, and on the main one going back to my heart. And my parents were faced with a, incredibly tough decision. They could either risk my life and keep trying to thin the clot, which unfortunately wasn't working at that point. They'd already lost me. I was in cardiac arrest for about 29 minutes. Or we could amputate through the knee, and doctors said that I would hopefully have a long and happy life. And thankfully, Mum and Dad made the right decision, and I've never really looked back since. So like I said, I've had a long, happy life.
You've thrived. It's quite the resume that you gave there. The way to make a girl feel inferior straight off the bat, Brenden. Thank you. Jenae, how about you?
Yeah, wow, world champion. Okay, I'm a mom. I'm a founder of Expand Your Library. So we activate allyship and interrupt cultural stereotypes within the education system through workshops. We curate resources, and one of the resources we just recently made was Allies and Friends in collaboration with ABC Kids Early Education and iView. And we also then took allyship to Play School and were the cultural consultants on their Play School special altogether, which won an ACTA award and was a Logie-nominated episode. So our whole purpose is to make sure that children know that they belong, and not only know that, but then that they feel that as well through the way of resources and experiences. And so we have expanded beyond culture because we know that inclusion is intersectional. So neurodiversity is very important, and inclusion with all children and all abilities. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, so this is really your wheelhouse. We're very lucky to have you. And Bec, can we hear a little bit about you as well?
So I'm Bec, and I'm a mum of 3. I've got 3 beautiful children. I've got 2 daughters, Charlotte and Olivia. They're 11 and 8. And then I've got my sweet boy, Lachlan. He is 5, and he's got autism level 3. He's also got chronic kidney disease, and a list of other medical complexities. So we're not new to the medical world. We've been here for a very long time, and we're ambassadors for the Children's Hospital Foundation.
And I've had the pleasure of meeting beautiful Bec before, a very special family. So thank you all. So this is it's great to have a conversation with all of your voices in it. So we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion. We hear those words and allyship. Jenae, I think you are perfectly placed. What does that mean? What is the definition of allyship before we get any further into this?
Well, allyship means lots of different things to many different people. And so I think it's important that when we are working with different communities and different people that we kind of ask them, what do you need from us? And you cannot define yourself as an ally. The community has to define you as an ally. And so that's why we say we try to activate allyship in lots of different ways. But essentially at the heart of allyship, it really is you moving beyond your own power and privilege to be able to do something for someone else. And it's the promise that there'll be systemic change. And so it is an action. It's not a feeling. It's not a fluffy nice to have. It's a need to have. And so really collectively as a community, if we are working together in the hopes of allyship, we can be creating systemic change for those who are on the margins.
So it's active support and active advocacy for a certain group.
Absolutely, advocacy. And, when we're talking about in the health space, one advocate for a family actually can help reduce the mortality rate for a patient. And so advocacy and allyship is literally life or death for some people.
Okay, and here's a few more stats to just sort of
Please
speak to how important it is. So in Australia, it is estimated that between 15 and 20% of children and teenagers are neurodivergent, and more than 12% of kids and young people, so anyone aged up to 24, is living with disability. And for a lot of disabled and neurodivergent kids, I guess you still see situations where they're trying to hide parts of themselves or mask who they really are to try and fit into our world. So we need to flip that, don't we? And create a world where they feel really comfortable. So I think we like to think we've all come a long way. What does disability and difference look like in our modern world, do you think, Brenden?
I think it's something to be celebrated in the modern world. It's just looking back over the years and speaking from the athlete perspective, I think in me, it's just that, 20 years ago, you talk about the Paralympics and you're walking down the street with someone about this conversation and they're like, what do you mean the Paralympics? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what is it? And just like, from 2004 where the athletes were competing in Athens and barely any crowds were rocking up, and if you knew about it, you'd watch a little bit of it on TV on either ABC or SBS and the weird hours of the morning with a quick highlights package. And now we've got like athletes competing over in the Com Games going on right now. And we're seeing that disability is being celebrated at a high performance level and it's more welcomed. So, that conversation is always ever growing and it's slowly starting to like increase and create awareness. And it's really difficult because some people with a disability, they're like, well, how can I be more noticed, be more included, more recognized? And everyone's like, well, I can become a Paralympian. That's like the way to do it. But it shouldn't be everyone's be-all, end-all decision to be more welcomed within the community. But we know that the community is becoming more welcoming in the fact that these guys are actually high-performing athletes and they should be celebrated at all levels with their Olympic counterparts. And I think that's the main thing. So for me, that's been the driving factor, is that the Paralympics is now getting just as much as the excitement as the Olympics. And I think to sort of be a part of that movement and help continue that movement going forward, I think that's when you can kind of be like, oh, we're finally getting there. Like as a community of people with disability, like we're finally being recognized and understood. It's been a long process, but there's also such a long way to go.
Totally. And do you think, Jenae, the same goes for disabilities that we can't see or neurodiversity? Do you think the awareness and the acceptance is changing?
I think there's more awareness. I think there's obviously always more that can be done. It's one thing to be aware of something like, autism and ADHD, and a lot of people are getting diagnosed later on in life. I was one of those people. I have ADHD and was diagnosed through the fact that both of my children are neurodivergent, one with autism, one with ADHD. And so there's a lot of awareness, but what does that mean now for like day-to-day interactions? And we say we're ready for children to belong and to be able to engage in ways that work best for them. But really there's still quite a lot of tension in the education space and in our healthcare space of what that actually means on a day-to-day practice, because it means we'd have to shift what we normally do and how we normally do it. And I think while we are improving, there's still a lot that needs to be done.
Bec, is that something you can speak to as well with your experience with Lockie?
Yeah, there's been many a times where we've been out in public and people just don't understand. So you get the looks and you get the whispers, and same like in, schools or healthcare settings where people just don't have the knowledge or the training on how to deal with children like Lockie. And that, can make barriers hard. And I struggle a lot with the looks and the talks, and all that sort of stuff. But you've got to take a step back and realise that a lot of people just don't have the education and the knowledge. They've been taught that, these kind of things are, hide these kind of issues away and all that sort of stuff. But people just need to have a little bit more knowledge and understanding around children like Lachlan.
With the looks and the comments, Bec, is that coming from kids or from adults as well?
Both. When it comes to children, it's a lot obviously easier to manage because, they are kids, but they don't understand whether that is they are very young and they haven't been, taught, or they're not given the chance to ask questions. Like, I am more than willing that if somebody comes up to me, whether they are a child or an adult, they come up and ask me, why is Lachlan in a wheelchair? Why does Lachlan have a feeding tube? Why is he flapping his arms or something? Within reason, you've got to be respectful, obviously. But ask me anything. I am more than willing. And my girls are the same. They are more than happy. They've had so many of their friends ask questions about their brother. And that's how acceptance and awareness is spread, by knowledge and firsthand experience. And that's just something I really am passionate about, is advocating. And there's no question, big or small, that I won't answer.
It's allyship, right, Jenae?
Absolutely.
So, Jenae, another question for you then, in a follow-up to that. How young are we when we start noticing people's differences?
Yeah, so from the research around, we'll start with race, right? So babies can notice differences in race from around 6 months old, around their caregivers and how they respond to that. And so they're noticing difference from the, children are absorbing things from the womb, so that all of the sounds and all of the experiences, what we eat. So then when they are born from 6 months, they can notice differences in race. And from the ages of 3 to 5 years old, that's when bias starts to play out. Now, that's not because there's anything that the child has done wrong. It's simply the conditioning that the child has been given, whether it be positive or negative, or lots of experience of diversity or little.
So learnt behaviours.
Learnt behaviours, exactly. And learnt language as well. And learnt responses, most importantly. How are the adults around them responding when difference pops up? And I just want to be very clear around language. Like, when we're talking to children around difference, it's not some people are different. It's we are all different. So we don't want to get into the habit of othering and saying, oh, well, they're different from us. It's like, no, actually, you're different from them and they're different from, we're all different from each other. Yeah. So it starts really young, and it is our responsibility to be having those conversations and to be immersing our children in the world, which is diverse and amazing.
Brenden, I guess you've got a really interesting perspective from the sense that you lost your leg at the age of 6. So you were not disabled, and then you were disabled. Do you remember a point where you suddenly felt different or had a difference pointed out by other people?
Yeah, I didn't really recognise it until I went back to school in a wheelchair, and then I was in that process of transitioning from my wheelchair to my prosthetic. And I think it's just like Jenae said, in that curiosity point of kids, and in primary school, I was in grade 1. So once I started to get into my leg, it was all of the older grades, like thinking back, kind of were continually pointing out that difference when I was at school. And I wouldn't say it was overall embracing. I was lucky I had really supportive friends in my year level. I was lucky I had really supportive teachers and family as well. But they were really repetitive at pointing out the fact that, like, oh, your leg's different. You got a peg leg. You got a metal leg. You're different to us. Like, we can run away from you, all this sort of stuff. And, like, looking back on it now, I was kind of like, well, to me, that was, like, weak bullying, but on their behalf. But it was purely because they just didn't understand. It was the first time they might have had someone of difference within their school. And as I got older, going through school, I would take the opportunity to, like, continually educate my friends and my peers and everyone else. And so when I would kind of, like, go and visit a school, or I was in a new class, I'd take that opportunity to be like, well, yeah, hey, I'm Brenden. I'm missing a leg. I've lost the majority of my hearing. I've got my leg slightly different to everybody else, but everybody else here is different in their own way as well. And my hearing aid would always color coordinate with my uniform. And so people would sort of, like, understand everything straight off the bat. So it sort of, like, taught me a lot of resilience early on, but at the same time, I shouldn't have to have been doing all of that paving the way kind of scenarios. I feel like if they kind of had been more educated to begin with, well, then it would have been a fully inclusive environment the minute I had got in there. But at the same time, looking back, I had a lot of fun being able to educate everyone about it.
So how do we all as adults then strike this correct balance between being age appropriate when it comes to pointing out that we are all different to young children, but also not making them, I guess, feel bad for being curious about differences?
Yeah.
How do you get that balance right?
I would just start factually and not emotionally. So oftentimes, and I know when I first was a first-time mom, was guilty of the same thing of like, oh, we don't look, or we don't say those things, or shh. And then what does that do, right? That does create shame. That does create a sense of fear of the other person that when they notice difference, like there's something wrong. And there isn't anything wrong. So the approach that I've found that works personally for me as a mom is just to be factual, like, yeah, that's right, buddy. They do have one leg, or they are in a wheelchair, or whatever it is, or they do have darker skin or lighter skin or straight hair or curly hair or whatever it is, and we talk about it. If you don't know, though, as a parent, I would even say, like, lean into that and say, you know what, buddy, that's actually a really great question. I'm not sure. How about, and then insert age appropriate response here. If they're young, let's go to the library and get some books. Let's learn together, or let's jump online and see what we can find. Let's jump on the Children's Hospital Foundation's website and find out some information. Or let's go talk to Uncle Billy, because he works as a doctor. He might know. Like, everybody's different. I do think that children should be allowed to ask those curious questions to the person, but again, like, in a respectful way. And so it's our job as parents and caregivers to start that foundational learning and that curiosity ourselves in a respectful way. So arming them with some information and experiences, right? Like, take your children out into communities you've never been into before. We do a donation every year to the Micah House in Brisbane every year. And last year I thought the kids were old enough to come with me. We drop off, books and resources and clothes and all the things. And as we were leaving, there was a woman in distress, and she was very distressed. And we got in the car. I could have easily drove home and not said anything. My kids were obviously noticed that she was in distress and something was happening for her. They could hear what she was saying. And I said, what did you guys feel about that? And they said, oh, well, she was obviously really upset. And I said, yeah. And I got to explain to them what it's like potentially for somebody who is struggling to pay their rent, which is what she was distressed about, and how to feed her children, which is what she was distressed about. And to talk about the amazing wraparound support that the community had and the importance of us doing our part. So have the conversation. It may be messy. It may not be perfect. Make it age appropriate. Your children, right? And just have that conversation. Then they left feeling more compassionate, and they said, oh, I want to keep doing the donation thing because they got to see how that might help somebody.
I was going to ask that, Jenae, about, well, Bec, I guess you can jump in here. What would you say to other adults who might be worried about the fact that it might get messy, or that they might say the wrong thing? Because I think so many of us can fall victim to that of feeling like we don't want to say the wrong thing. So perhaps avoidance is easier altogether. What would be your advice or your lived experience, Bec?
I personally don't think any question is wrong and any answer is wrong. You can only answer to the best of your knowledge and your personal understanding in the matter. But obviously research and all that sort of stuff is fantastic, and reading books and all that sort of stuff. Even for myself, there's a lot of things that as a medical mum, as a mum with a child with autism, there's still so much that I'm learning on a day-to-day basis. And kids are sponges, so they will soak up all that information, and they're going to, like you said, become more compassionate. Like, my girls are two of the most compassionate, empathetic humans you'll ever meet, because they have learnt experience. They have seen way more than you would ever expect any child to see at 8 and 11. There's even questions that they ask that it's hard to put into words how to explain it to them. But I always have the mentality that they need to know these things. It's going to make them better people, and they're going to grow up to hopefully one day teach others as well. So there's no right and wrong, really, when it comes to teaching children how to accept others.
Brenden, your little boys are, 18 months and 4. So how have you explained difference to them?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I was really lucky to be able to not really explain difference to them, but show difference to, my eldest anyway. My youngest wasn't born at that point. He was lucky to experience Paris in 2024 and watch Dad carry the flag and then swim for Australia. So
cool.
it was it made my job a lot easier. I didn't have to do a lot of explaining. He got to see everything like live up in front, like on a daily basis while he was there. So, but it was great to like join him once I'd finished competing at the games and we got to travel around, because I had never experienced so many questions from an inquisitive little mind, and one that's like my own. So that's what also made it really special. And it kind of made it easier to explain things. And without even realizing it, I think I kind of like generated a little advocate personally to do half the job when we got home, to sort of, spread the word that, everybody is different and that's perfectly okay, because that's how the world works. And, everyone goes about doing things a little bit differently to achieve the same thing. And he kind of understood that and got that point. So now he also knows that like he's always the one looking out for everyone back home. So just having that discussion with him was a lot easier, because visually it became really easy for him to understand. There was a couple of times though where Mum had to be like, there was a couple of short-statured guys doing their races at the pool, and he was like, "Oh, Mama, why is that little boy swimming on the block? Can I go race too?" And he'd try and bolt through to the pool. But it was, it was good to be able to sort of like explain to him like, well, when we go to the Paralympics, we're sort of all in separate classes, and to try and match each other's impairments so that all of the races become as fair and equal as possible. And at the end of the day, everyone's trying to do the same thing. They're trying to run, push, swim, throw as far and fast and as high as possible to, hopefully win a medal for their country. And for him, it was like, oh, okay, this is like cool. So now every time we go everywhere, he's sort of explaining to everybody that everybody's different and that's okay, which makes it, my job a little bit easier.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, between all your children, we've got the next generation, current allies and next generation of allies with parents who are all doing such wonderful work. Brenden, just before we started recording this podcast, you mentioned the book 10 Little Fingers and 10 Little Toes. And I'd love to talk about that. When you started reading that, what was the conversation with your son?
Well, first it was like, well, you don't have 10 toes, Dad. And I was like, yeah, good point. Good solid point, mate. Thanks for pointing that out.
Very good counting.
But then he was like, well, you do because your leg's on, so you have 10 toes. So for him to like realize that at such a young age and notice that, it's sort of just been this growing sort of knowledge base. And he also knows that a lot of Dad's friends are in wheelchairs, have missing fingers, missing arms. So he likes to question the book every now and then, and we've started reading it to my youngest now as well, Hugo, and he likes to come in and butt in and just be like, Hugo, just so you know, not everyone has 10 fingers and 10 toes.
So cool.
So, and like when I read that part, Hugo likes to like tap my leg and then shake his head, like full well knowing, like letting me know that, well, Dad doesn't have 10 toes. So it's kind of cool to know that they understand that everyone's going to be different, and that's perfectly okay.
What would be your advice, Jenae, when it comes to those sort of books and movies? And gosh, I would say it's the majority of it. Should we be binning it? Should we not be reading it? Or should we just be making a point when we are reading it to point out that not everyone is like this?
I think it's a mixture of both, right? Like I love that you've edited and your son is just pretty much editing the story, because it creates conversation, right? So whenever we're watching a movie or we're reading a book, I want to have conversations with the kid. Or what do you think that they might be feeling about how they were treated? Or what do you think that they might mean by that? Or actually, do we think that that's true or kind, or like, and we can actually have sometimes I get a little bit annoying and we're having commentary throughout the whole movie, but
Mum, just let us watch it.
Just let us watch it, girl. But I think those moments are important to be able to say, okay, this is the book or resources that we have. So we can have intentional conversation around it, and we need to go out and look for the books, the stories, the resources that do reflect our reality and all the world around us, other people's stories, books especially are mirrors, windows, and sliding doors. So the mirror effect is it reflects you through the pages. The window is that you can have a look into someone else's life. And the sliding door is that we are a community with differences altogether. So you want to be having a mixture of mirrors, windows, and sliding doors, resources, experiences, and conversations. You can't just throw everything out,
No. What can we be showing our kids to start those conversations?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot. There's so many books and resources. The whole point of where Expand Your Library started is that I was looking specifically for more inclusive stories, that I made a partnership. When I say partnership, I just went in and met the lady who owned the Bundaberg Dimmicks, and I said, hey, I need some more books that are inclusive. And she would order them. And still to this day, my children are 9 and 11, and she will still call and email me saying, hey, I've got these really cool books and I'm ordering things in. So, but Allies and Friends, we talk about like cultural inclusion and allyship. That's actually a really great book. I wish I knew you were going to ask me the question, because it's about a boy with one leg, and at the back of it, they have ways to have that conversation. And now I need to find what the story is called.
And if she can't while we're doing this, we'll put some notes at the bottom of the podcast.
Sounds like it might be better than my book that I went with. I went with the Wonky Donkey, because the donkey's got a prosthetic leg. And so my son likes to let me know that you're the Wonky Donkey dad.
Oh,
kids, you got to love them, right?
Oh, What Happened to You is what it's called. It's by James Catchpole and Karen George. It's a boy with one leg, and the kids are always like, what happened to you? Why do you have, and they talk about what actually happens on the playground when kids are saying comments. Yeah. But they give, like you said, practical advice about how to have those conversations and how to respond. And they've got so many different stories based on that as well, so with different abilities. So What Happened to You by James Catchpole.
So that's the direction we obviously want to be going in and that we need to be going in. Obviously, we're not always getting there. So what does it look like when kids are masking who they really are? What does that actually mean, that sense of masking, Jenae? And then I'll bring you into this as well, Bec.
I'll talk from my personal experience, because everybody's experience is different. And just because someone's autistic doesn't mean they're a homogenous group, that they're all the same. So it's good to have lots of different voices on this. But so for my children, I've been told before that your children are not autistic or they're not neurodivergent because they're so well behaved, but they're actually pushing themselves to their limit to ignore all of the stresses of the sensory overload, the sounds, the smells, the unfamiliar places, the mixed routine, all the things that when they come home, they'll have moments of dysregulation that can last for days, can last for weeks. I always say the school holidays, when I get 2 weeks, the first week is always them just regulating and getting out of the fact that they've had to push so hard at school to mask all of their symptoms and to ignore what they need. And then the second week is bliss. So the 6-week holiday, I get my children back 100%, because the first week they've regulated, and then we have 5 amazing weeks of them just being happy, healthy, wholesome, because we have all the things in place.
So if you don't mind me asking, what parts of themselves are they hiding or changing at school that makes them dysregulated in that first week?
I think it's the fact that people think accommodations are a sometimesy thing. Like if you need to wear glasses like I do, you don't only wear it on Monday when you have Japanese and HPE. You need them every day, all day, right? And so people think an accommodation is just a nice to have, but it's a need to have. People also think that sensory is a sensory preference. Oh, I'd prefer to have the lights down, or I'd prefer to have it quiet. No, it's not a preference. It's like it's your nervous system actually needs those things to function and to thrive. And so as parents, I'm sure, Bec, you're the same. We're thinking 10 steps ahead always on how we can keep our kids happy, regulated, safe, feeling a sense of autonomy. But, we were talking earlier, how far have we come? They walk into school, or they walk into a hospital, or they walk into any organization, and they have to immediately ignore the things that they need on a day-to-day basis, because it's not seen as a need, it's seen as a preference. And then behavior is looked at like, oh, you're difficult or you're misbehaving, when actually it's like someone having the volume full up all the time and the lights shining bright in your face. And if you're anything like me, I can hear everything. I can hear what's happening over here. I can hear what's happening in the office beside. I can hear all the sounds. So it's not that they're not able to take in the information. It's that they're taking in all of the information, and there's no break from that. So I think it's different for everyone. As I also try to talk to my children about the privilege that they have. My son is level 1, ASD level 1, and we have a cousin who's ASD level 3. There's different power and privileges there. My son can communicate when capacity and regulation is there. So my nephew, he's nonverbal, and he probably will always be nonverbal. And so that creates a level of barrier for him that he will have to navigate. So what can my child do as an ally when he's with his cousin to advocate, to help? So it's so much to unpack. We could do a whole episode just on that.
Bec, I'll bring you in. What do you find when you're in those clinical settings with Lockie? Can you see the shift in him when things aren't suitable for his needs?
Yeah, at the moment we're in a really tricky stage with Lachlan. As soon as we leave the house, that's it, he's triggered. It's very difficult on many levels to do anything with him because he is level 3 and he is non-speaking. That also adds another level of we don't really see him masking because he doesn't have that ability, but he is very, very continuously dysregulated literally as soon as we leave the house. It's too noisy, it's too bright, he's not in his safe space, he doesn't have the comfort of his bed and his toys, and, you'll give him the things that will normally calm him down at home in a space that's not the house, and things like that still don't work for him. So we're in one of the trickiest stages at the moment is I kind of just can't leave the house with him unless it's for, appointments and hospital visits and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's very, very tricky trying to navigate everything and trying to keep him as regulated as I can in situations where we're forced to be in. So yeah, we're struggling a little bit with that at the moment, but we do try and I'll use his physio and OT and speech sessions as an example. We always try and create the environment that's best suited for him. So we'll dim the lights and we'll put the softer music on and make it as comfortable for him. Whereas, things like going to the hospital for, bloods or, your nose tube change, you can't dim the lights in a hospital room. So yeah, it's a tricky kind of balancing act with Lockie.
I just want to add to that actually is that I don't think people think about when your child goes to the hospital or to the doctors, it's probably maybe once a year, if that, right? And so for a lot of parents, they're going multiple times a week. If the space is not inclusive, if there isn't a sense of allyship and or deep understanding of what a child needs if they're living with a disability or a neurodivergent, then it actually increases the risk of trauma because they're having harmful experience again and again and again. And so even when you do have a great inclusive space, you have to understand they're not coming to you with a blank slate. They're coming to you with an accumulation of harmful experiences in that 100%. Space.
Yeah, the car as well is a very tricky situation as well. The car trips we found, I can't even take the girls down to school. We live 3 minutes away from their school. Just the sound of the car, the sound of the car surrounding him, everything like that. It's hard to try and replicate the same environment that he has at home.
Yeah, absolutely, Bec. It's such yes. I can't even imagine how challenging that is. So how do we start to then create spaces where someone like Lachlan can feel comfortable?
Well, I think my situation would be very different to yours, Bec, but my son has had lots of experiences at the Queensland Children's Hospital and we love it there. They're amazing. No one paid me to say that. And the reason why we love it is because you can tell that there's this sense of wanting to continue to learn and be willing and saying your child best. So, what's your pain from 1 to 10? Me and as an adult, I hate that question. I don't know.
I hate that question too. I'm so glad you said that.
So I'm I don't know how to tell you. I'm either in pain or I'm not in pain. And so we had this really brilliant nurse and she said, you know what, hold on 1 second, bud. And she went and read his file and saw that there was ASD and she came back and she had a simple chart of faces. And she said, which face do you connect with? Which face feels like you? And he pointed and she said, okay, we need to get you some pain medicine. You're at a 9. And so before that, other doctors we've had, they're like, oh, well, he must be fine. But we've had severe, serious injuries where ambulances have come and they've been like, he's not crying. It's like, no, his pain threshold is a little different. Once he knows he's, actually okay, then his brain is like, cool, we'll just chill, even though it could be really bad. You need to be not assuming that because they say one, that actually is the answer. They might not actually understand that.
Yeah, can I just add?
Please.
Right? Like,
Please,
obviously,
yeah.
in my day-to-day as a physio, and like you get taught that, right? It's in your curriculum. Like, you're there to help someone through their pain and lived experiences to like get them moving better, getting back to what they normally do. And for me, like, just based on my past experiences and my experiences with a lot of disabilities, it's like we've got that scale of like 1 to 10. It's annoying. It's sometimes very unable to interpret it. Where the good thing is that like most of the time, if you can get that scale, you can get those descriptive faces on it. So like no matter who I see throughout the day, I'll just be like, hey, like your pain, how is it feeling? There's these faces you can use to hope like we can pinpoint like what it's making you feel like, and that's what we'll work on from there.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, oh, well, it's like it actually makes me like I'm resonating with this face the most. I'm like, great. So you're at a 7. Let's see if we can bring it back down to where you're kind of smiling a bit. And then they're just like, oh, thanks for like taking the time to like really understand and explain what it might feel like. And that's not from me. Like you go through those learning processes when you're doing your physio degree, but that's me more applying my like learned experiences, just trying to make sure that regardless of who I'm seeing, I treat everybody in the same way so that everyone can hopefully come to the safe, happy, conclusion.
Well, that's right. It's not we need to do this one way for this child who has a disability and this way for someone who doesn't. It actually
it's just the same.
It's the same for everybody. And so make those accommodations, have some flexibility. Like if you need to do, I know when our son was in the hospital, they needed to do a bunch of tests, but they broke them up and said, we'll do these 2 now. We'll come back after lunch and do the rest. And that allowed him to build up his capacity again rather than just going, push through. But if and obviously not everything you can change, and nobody's asking for a complete, overhaul of a hospital space or a school. But it's like you said, having the level of flexibility and thinking, if this works for this person, maybe I'll try to use that for all people. And
I think it goes back to one of your initial points on the podcast, Jenae, which was that we are all different. And just because you might not have a diagnosis of neurodivergence doesn't mean that your brain might not think slightly differently.
Totally.
And a different technique might actually be very useful.
We get that a lot in schools. They'll say, oh, we don't do fidgets and headphones because it's distracting. And I always say, well, you might find that if you put them out for a week, there'll be children who are not diagnosed who will need them. They didn't know that they needed them. And the kids who don't need them, it'll be old news in 2 days and they won't touch them again. And when they trial it, they go, oh, actually 4 kids who I didn't know, they actually need them and they've been working so great. And the rest of them, the kids, they don't worry about it anymore.
And then wouldn't it be fair to say that the other part of that is the kids who do need them might feel more comfortable using them because they're available for everyone.
Everyone. It's not just this one, child or this one special moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is off script, but I would love you guys, if you can, to share any examples of really lovely allyship that you've seen in practice. What's the gold standard? What should we be aiming for?
Wow. I feel like because I've become obsessed with the word ally and allyship that there's lots of moments and gems all the time that the kids are showing me.
They can be simple ones.
Well, to your point, you were talking about like how anybody can have a disability at some point, right? Whether it's for temporary or for permanent. And my son ended up in a wheelchair and for a period of time. And he went to school and all of a sudden, oh, what are we going to do with this kid in a wheelchair?
Yeah.
He can't go to the restroom. He can't do PE. He'll have to stay home. And it's like, what are you talking about? But the children immediately gravitated to him, were like, what's happening? And I got down to the eye level, explained what was happening, explained what he can and can't do. And then all 4 of his 5 friends, plus his entire classroom, just wrapped around him for that period of time for the last term and were helping him. They moved the design of one of the boys. So we need to move our space, our room. He can't move around the way he needs to, and giving him the right distance and educating new people who would come into the room, including him in sport. I think it's really, allyship doesn't have to be this big grand gesture. It can simply just be, what can I do to help ease what you're going through right now? And so one boy would go on walks with him. They would He'd arrive at school and they would just walk around the playground together in the morning instead of going and playing soccer. So, I think if children naturally think that way, I think as adults we overcomplicate things sometimes. And really it's like,
I think big terms like that sometimes can add to that. Allyship, we might think that all sounds very theoretical, but that's a great, it's simple gestures, like you say. Bec, anything recently that anyone's done for Lachlan that's made the world of difference to you and to him?
I say this all the time. My girls will bend over backwards whenever we're in a situation that is not comfortable for Lockie. They will take him in walks in his wheelchair. They will help him with his iPad. And it's just, I probably sound like a broken record talking about my girls all the time, but they have really, really shown how important it is for siblings to be surrounded and have the knowledge that I, myself, and my husband have. They soak everything up. They could literally sit here and do this podcast with you today. That's how much knowledge about their brother that they have, not just about his autism, but also all of his medical side of things. They could sit here and tell you all about kidney disease, all about how his dialysis works and all that sort of stuff. So my girls make our life, they're crazy and frantic and chaotic in their own way, but they try with every ounce of their being to make their brother's life just a little bit easier, whether that's, going to the other end of the house to find Lachlan's favourite toy, or, walking around a hospital ward around and around and around in circles for like hours because they're trying to just make his life just a little bit happier.
You don't sound like a broken record, Bec. You sound like a proud mum, and you should be proud because your girls sound beautiful.
You.
Brenden, any sort of closing remarks?
No, I think we've kind of covered all the topics there. It's like, I think it's just kind of like Jenae said, how the class kind of does. It's like, why should it be up to the adults to last minute scramble to make these modifications in order to improve these barriers to participation that a child might be experiencing within a classroom, a playground, or a sporting team? It's just, that's kind of telling me that the majority of these organisations have decided to just go and sort of write everything, organise everything without even considering that somebody might be a little bit more different than the other person, and they might require a couple more obstacles to overcome to achieve the same goal, which is perfectly fine. It's what I've had to do my whole life. But we need to be accommodating and have the patience for allowing that to happen in its own natural space. And I think trying to hustle people along to sort of get these mods done and Johnny can't contribute today because he's in his wheelchair, so we're just going to quickly do this. Johnny, just sit there and you watch, and then, it's kind of done. And I think that's kind of where we're still trying to comprehend and learn, is these modifications are still being implemented as we go. And I think more consideration needs to be taken into the fact that those modifications should already be in place so that the environment is already inclusive from the get-go, not just because, someone's rocked up, we've got to figure out a way to become inclusive in 30 seconds. What are we going to do?
Where's the inclusivity handbook?
Kids,
Literally.
Bodie with his toy dump truck, he'll jump in it and he'll be like, I'm Rick pushing a wheelchair in his dump truck. I know exactly how to do this. So the kids can make that modification. I think, we need to take that step back, the stress away from it, and sometimes those sort of situations kind of just handle themselves.
Maybe as adults, don't worry about getting it perfect, but try as possible to get it right.
Yeah, I always say you don't have to be a perfect ally, but you do have to be a persistent one. That's it. Just continue to try, to learn, to rebuild, to self-educate. It sounds tiring, but actually it's just basic human decency to to someone else to say, what else can I do?
Yeah.
Especially if you're in a space of health or education, that's the paid responsibility, is to make sure that all children can thrive in your environment. So yeah, just be persistent. Just keep trying. You're not always going to get it perfect. I don't always get it right. That's not what it's about. It's about just trying and, like you said, forward thinking and being intentional about what we're doing and how we're doing it and why are we doing it this way. We get it into the routine of, well, it's always been done this way. Well, then maybe that we should look at it.
Yeah.
Let's put a flip on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's mix it up, people. All right. Persistence, not perfection. I think that's the takeaway. Thank you all so much. That has been such a great conversation. I hope everyone listening has gotten something out of it as well. If you would like to learn more about how you can make a difference and support the Children's Hospital Foundation, please check out their Instagram and Facebook at children's.org.au or visit the website at children's.org.au. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for listening to Building Resilient Kids. Don't forget to follow us on socials at children's.org.au. And from everyone at the Children's Hospital Foundation, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.